Good evening, everyone. Thank you. It's great to be here. What a cool place. I've never been on a stage with actually 360-degree participants. So let's dive right in. I actually think that mobility, transportation, and automotive is actually the hottest industry you can work in right now. It is amazing how much actually is happening. And if you look in the future, just look at what's happening to cities. I mean, the forecast for 2050 is actually that about 9 billion people will live on this planet, that actually about 70% will live in cities, which is a huge increase compared to today. And actually about 80% of all goods will be produced outside the country people live in. So that means much more need for transportation of goods in addition to transportation of people. What cities need are actually smart city solutions. And I will talk a little bit more about this. Now, for us as automotive, it's a huge disruption. I mean, a disruption in three different angles, actually, from a technology perspective, going from combustion engines to electric drive. Great for cities, making cities clean, making cities quiet, making cities livable. And you look at the second axis of disruption, from us humans as drivers to self-driving automobiles, another huge change. And about 90% of that is actually software and services. And looking at the urbanization part, as I just mentioned, going from ownership to mobility on demand, to mobility as a service. And that's also about 90% driven by software and services, heavily based on AI. And, I do think for us, automotive players, it's the easiest to manage the first axis of disruption, going to electric drive. You see these vehicles here from Audi, the Audi e-tron Quattro, the Porsche Mission E, looking at, the ID family of Volkswagen, looking at electric buses of our brands like Scania, or looking at electric trucks. So that is actually easiest. And you saw that's about 50% software and services, which is, digital platforms, the ecosystem, and building all that. And of course, making hopefully every piece of software within the vehicles upgradable, updatable, over the air, and so on. That's already a big challenge, but manageable. Now, much, much bigger is actually the challenge to look at the business disruption. And I know we are talking a lot about, business on this track here and how that is changing over time. And mobility as a service, as we call it, is actually the biggest factor here. And let me dive right in and show you the 5 layers of disruption and 5 layers of, let's say, profit pools and, at the end of the day, value drivers in this area. Number one, you need a self-driving system for this. So looking at, currently, if you look at taxis, about 80% of the cost is the human driver. Looking at buses, about 60% of the cost are the human driver. Looking at, trucks, about 1/3 of the cost is the human driver. So you need a self-driving system, and there's a huge profit pool. There are more than 50 companies actually working on developing a self-driving system. Most OEMs try to do it. A lot of, new players looking at Waymo, Uber, and so on, looking at technology companies. Out of the more than 50 companies trying to solve this, we believe that long-term, likely only 2 to 5 systems will actually lead this and make a successful, self-driving system standard. Second layer is actually the automotive OEM. We are used to that, designing, developing, producing these vehicles. The next layer is the fleet operator, who will actually have a contract with the cities, likely for 3 years or 5 years. Very, very important. I mean, whoever is the fleet operator is also the owner of the fleet, and having a mobility control center, managing the fleet, and so on. The next layer is actually the mobility provider, like the Uber or Lyft or Didi or Moya and Get, in our case, establishing this, for ride-hailing, ride-pooling, and other services. And then the content and services provider, offering all kinds of digital content, physical content, and a bit more about this in a minute. So each company, each player needs to decide, do they want to play in all 5 layers or in only some? And it's also a city-by-city and a market-by-market decision. This is not an easy one. Of course, at least in Europe, we as a group, we try to be a full system provider for the cities. Very, very important. So looking at the product, new KPIs for how to develop the products, actually. You look at the self-driving vehicle, basically, it is very important, the yellow part. We need to design this, keeping in mind the cost per passenger kilometers. I mean, in US dollars, some projection actually show that the cost per kilometer, per passenger kilometer, or per passenger mile, I should say, in US cents, is like will be 16 to 19 US cents per mile. That is actually quite crazy, and only about 3.8 US cents per mile being the vehicle itself. And we are currently at about 38, US cents per mile, so it means factor 10, this needs to be reduced. Now looking at, customer centricity, security, of course, cybersecurity, very, very important. Redundancy, we can learn a lot from the airplanes and how airplanes are being built, aviation industry. Redundancy in the braking, in the steering, redundancy in the power supply, redundancy in the software and the hardware, very, very important topic. Availability, also very important, that people get, from door to door, from A to B, without any breakdowns. Then vehicle lifetime. We come from, let's say, 200,000 kilometers or so vehicle lifetime for passenger cars, maybe 600,000 for commercial vehicles. And some people project that, technology can be developed to actually reach 1 million kilometers or 1.5 million kilometers even, of course, with refurbishing programs and so on to change some of the interior, other components. And then, driving behavior, much less important because, these vehicles will accelerate less promptly and will decelerate, less heavy, and it will of course be much better for the materials. Maybe even different battery technologies and so on can be integrated also to lower the costs. And then powertrain, about the same importance. Now, looking at kind of the visions, what are we meaning in terms of product? This is Cedric, our first self-driving car vision. 4-seater or 2+2-seater, like a lounge chair, and then 2 additional kind of mobile seats. You can actually just jump in with your luggages, and you can just have them basically in the interior. There are no trunks or frunks or so, and no steering wheel and pedals, completely self-driving and fully electric. This is another vision. We call this a small urban commuter. Maybe you can have 2 of these in one lane, actually traveling and taking less space away just for one person. Another vision for a long-distance lounge, kind of an intercity carrier to bring people actually also between cities, with the possibility to sleep or just relax and enjoy the ride. Looking at racing, this is of course not for inner cities, but on close racetracks and so on. I've been in self-driving race vehicles several times. It's a lot of fun. Centimeter by centimeter, they measure the track and get faster and faster lap after lap. And if people want to have some fun, they can actually have that. Now looking at ride pooling, kind of from station to station, also from dynamic station to dynamic stations. This is a small urban shuttle, kind of a vision for Moya in the future for ride pooling, and it could be a 6-seater, 8-seater, or a 12-seater as shown here. Self-driving delivery vans. A lot of people ask me, can this be done without having a person actually taking the goods and bringing it to the people, to the homes? I actually do think that this is completely feasible. If you think about, the Packstation, mobile packing station, as DHL has them in Germany, for example. I mean, you can have your goods delivered to these pack stations today. Now, just put such a pack station on wheels and let that actually drive around through the neighborhoods. It's completely feasible technically, and it will be done this way, I'm completely certain. And there will be, contracts with Amazon, with FedEx, with DHL, with Hermes, and so on. And, when the vehicle is in front of your home, you get a message, you get out, you type in your code, the right doors are opening, and you get out your packages, maybe put some packages back in to be returned, and let it continue to drive to your neighbor's home. So completely feasible. And then the last vision, just looking at long-haul trucking, you can imagine without actually the need for a driver, there is no need for a cabin. This is, how these vehicles could look like in the future. And we have, deep discussions right now with Scania and MAN, our colleagues in the truck and bus division, how large, these trucks should be. Is it the same kind of long-haul truck as we know it today, or could it be smaller? Because, we all know the usage, is not at 100% today, and smaller goods are also being transported. And the same discussion we have actually for the large buses. What is the ideal bus size of the future? Is it not better to have actually more vehicles, and have the goods for a full transport broken down into several smaller goods? So, looking at, the overall, let's say, application fields of the self-driving system and of the, mobility as a service, we do think that there is some competitive advantage for players like the Volkswagen Group to actually develop some of these technologies like the self-driving system just once and then implement it through the wide fields of applications like the passenger cars or trucks or utility vehicles and buses, but then also these two completely new categories of products like the new mobility as a service vehicles and then even new vehicle concepts for owned autonomy like the Audi Icon we just showed a few weeks ago at the IAA in Frankfurt. This is how it looks from the outside, but much more interesting is actually the interior, and I'm actually quite happy that we had the courage to actually work on this vision and show it to the public in Frankfurt with no steering wheel, no pedals. This is how a long-distance lounge could actually look like, and I think this is revolutionary. As you can see, no steering wheel and pedals. Now, what's important to me is that we don't do all this just because it's technically important and feasible, or actually technically feasible, I should say, but that we do this because it's the right thing for the human. Our concept for this we call human thinking, kind of taking design thinking to the next level. And I also call it human first. And I actually just sent a tweet just 3 weeks ago or so to Donald Trump saying it shouldn't be America first, it should be human first. So he didn't respond, but I still thought it's a great idea. Now, thank you. Maybe he will eventually learn. So looking at the 5 or 8 KPIs, the few topics actually which I think are important when you think about products, services, solutions of the future. Number one, emotion. Does it touch people? Does it show actually that we care and that actually people enjoy it? I do think this is important. The next one, is it beautiful? And I saw this with Johnny Ive at Apple actually quite a lot, how deeply he cared on the hardware design, the industrial design, but also the human interface design, the user experience design. So beauty will stay or will remain important. The next category, the next KPI is innovation. Does it actually solve people's problems? The best definition for innovation, in my opinion, is innovation is about solving problems, not about having an idea. So you actually need to implement stuff and get something done. Now, looking at intelligent, is it a smart solution? Of course, a lot of this is heavily based on AI, based on deep learning, on deep neural networks. And the next one, integrity, is it the right thing to do? I saw this a lot also at Apple, that in most of the executive reviews, actually, we ask the question, what is the right thing to do? And if you ask it this way, you actually make the right decision. Next one is actually life. Does it actually improve people's life? Society. Does it actually move society forward as a whole? And then sustainability, or you could also say environment, does it actually preserve our planet? And these are 8 topics, 8 KPIs, which I feel, we should all really take into account as we, start our new company, work on new products of the future, work on innovation to actually, create sustainable, solutions. And looking at the emotion, a short video, this kind of shows, 2030. We want to start in 2021 with mobility as a service, with self-driving vehicles, in the first 2 to 5 cities. But this is, going a step further, without mixed traffic, but actually 100% of a city moving to self-driving electric vehicles. And this is Cedric. As I showed it before, you see, basically traffic lights where, you have actually no traffic lights or intersections, I should say. And you can now kind of guess, which vehicle is maybe from which brand out of our 12 brands portfolio. Our designers here in Potsdam, just nearby, had some fun creating this completely in-house. Now you look at the right-hand eye, and you see it's also kind of cute, and it will communicate, with us humans as drivers in other vehicles, or as pedestrians, as bicycle drivers, and so on. And this is important. And I actually do believe that this will be standardized so that we can actually interact as humans with all of these self-driving vehicles and no need to learn different languages. Now, beauty, it is important, not just the outer beauty, the design, but actually also the inner beauty. We included some succulent plants which also clean the air. And also, especially in China, it was received very well this year in Shanghai when we showed it there. As you all know, some cities in China do have some air pollution challenges, and in addition to carbon filters to do this. Now, very important is innovation, and I have this little one button with me. This is actually a little device which I would just love to give away, starting 2021 for free to all of you, to all of us. And it has a communications device, it has GPS, it has a battery, it has a compass. And this little ring, as you see it on the slide, it's shown in blue. It has different functions. When you push the button, it first shows that it's searching for the next self-driving vehicle, the next Cedric. When it's found it, you see it's going from 0 to 100%, and you kind of see as it actually drives towards you. When it's there, it's switching into a compass mode, and you can actually rotate this and see at which entrance, at which gate actually the vehicle is. And then for the blind people, it has also some vibration signals, and so that it's actually helping them to locate the vehicle, and with proximity sensing and so on. And you only need one of these. You don't need another one from another competitor, and it's kind of locking people in positively in the ecosystem. And you can see the concept also with Amazon Dash button and so on for your home, and it works. Now, next, looking at intelligence, you need a smart self-driving system. And just for those of you engineers or maybe interested in this, what you actually need is 360-degree sensing, and with laser, radar, with cameras, with ultrasonic or short-range radar sensing. In addition, you need a central computing unit like 50, 60 times, more powerful and higher performance than compared to today driver assistance systems. What you also need is redundancy, as I mentioned, across the board, in the software, in the hardware, in the services, in the power supply, in the braking, in the steering, and so on. And we are actually learning from aviation and the design and the architecture, the same for cybersecurity. Now, about 90% of this is the AI-based software, from the perception, the sensor fusion, the object detection, the situation analysis, heavy deep learning, heavy AI in this module, path planning, decision making. Also here, these vehicles actually don't just learn by themselves, they actually learn from each other in the fleet, kind of in the swarm intelligence and almost the superhuman capabilities. Decision making, localization, the HD map. Now, on the integrity side, is it the right thing to do? Of course. 91% of all accidents are caused by us humans, and at least 81.4% of these will definitely not occur with self-driving vehicles because they don't drink and drive, they don't text and drive. You can go through the whole list. It's quite obvious. So I really see this as a duty. We have to get this done, and we will get it done within the next 3-4 years. Starting, of course, now with safety drivers in the vehicles, and as we can release it city by city by city, we will start with 2 to 5 cities in 2021. And then the question is, how quickly can you go to 50 cities, 500 cities, 5,000 cities, and really, offer people around the world this solution. Now, looking at does it improve people's life, the most important thing is the time we can give back to people, about 38,000 hours. This is amazing, how much time you can just, use to be productive, to relax, to actually, play with your children, to finally see, what's around you, the nature and so on, enjoy that. Also, very important, the digital platform. You look at the blue ring with the 3 stores, the mobility store, the automotive store, and then especially the content store. You look at these huge OLED screen in the vehicles because you don't have a cockpit, you don't need to drive, with entertainment, with shopping, with working, with education, but also with a huge advertisement platform. And of course, we don't want to give this advertisement platform away to the Facebooks and Googles. And then you look at the curation and orchestration AI layer based on the customer profile and ID. Looking at society, the biggest improvement here is actually accessibility for everyone, improving social mobility, maybe even talking about basic mobility. People today talk about basic income. Maybe eventually we can offer basic mobility, to the pharmacy, to the doctor, to the grocery store, all based on advertisement. And this is huge. Now, looking at sustainability, this is a street here in Berlin, a real street, a one-way street. 96% of the time, our cars are just parked somewhere, are not being used. And only 4% they are used. This is how it could look in 2025, going from 4% usage to 40% usage of these vehicles throughout the day, going to 2-lane streets, and the cars, those, times they are not needed. They could park a little bit, outside the cities. Talking about parking, this is Houston in Texas. These are all the parking garages and parking lots. Amazing how much space is wasted, valuable space in the cities for parking. This is the vision for 2025, much more green space, parks, children's playgrounds, of course additional buildings for museums and so on. This is how this could be solved. Outside the city core, like these Autostadt towers, where on the ground floor you have the cleaning and charging station, or actually the cleaning station inside and outside, and then for parking and for charging, they just go up into the tower. And the vision is overall mobility for all, and actually by the push of a button, as I just showed. And for the cities themselves, we actually believe cities need a smart city operating system. For that, our Porsche SE mothership has actually acquired the PTV group in Karlsruhe. I'm actually able to serve in the board of directors and really offering that mobility pillar from the planning through the modeling to the simulation all the way to the real-time operating system. And this is Stuttgart, including 3D mobility, modular 3D mobility with the capsula on the ground module, and then actually it can be picked up by an air module, be decoupled from the ground module, and then you actually remain sitting, whether you are in this capsula on the ground on the streets, or actually in the Hyperloop train, as you can see it here. The capsula gets actually built or gets put into the train, and you can move on in the train, and then in addition in the air. So I think we are the generation who can make this happen, with partners, hopefully with many of you, and we're on this journey together, and thanks again for inviting me. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.